Today we're going to go over everything you need to know to figure out the best workout split for your size goals. We're going to go over your typical 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 day splits that hit everything twice a week. And then after that, we're going to go over some ways to alter some of those splits and hit some muscle groups 3 times per week. Now, there's 4 things you got to do when you're choosing your split. First of all, you have to figure out how much training experience you have, and I'll go over what this means in just a second. You also need to decide which muscle groups are important for you to grow. After that, we're going to decide a split based off of those first 2 answers to those first 2 questions. Fourth and finally, we're going to make sure that we can get enough volume to our target muscles while still allowing them to recover between sessions. Getting right into it, step number 1, what level of training are you at? Now, this doesn't necessarily indicate time spent in the gym lifting or gym knowledge, lifting knowledge, whatever. This more or less correlates to how easily you can put on muscle. Now, if you're a beginner, you're gonna make gains just by looking at the dumbbell rack. You do whatever the hell you want, eat whatever the hell you want, and you will grow muscle because you are so sensitive to stimulus. If you're an intermediate, you've probably plateaued once in your life, but then after being a little bit more thoughtful of your training and your diet, you're able to make gains pretty easily. And if you're advanced, every single part of your training, diet, and programming needs to be meticulously thought through, or else you will probably not make any gains. Now, before we get into our 2 and 3 day splits, let's go over really quick what impacts our split choice. That first factor is going to be, are we able to hit all of our target muscles with enough volume for growth? All of these splits that I'm going to go over will most likely allow you to do that, but that pretty much is how you decide between 3, 4, 5, 6 day splits. Secondly, we need to arrange our days and lifts so that our muscles can recover between sessions. Third, we want to make sure our prioritized muscles can actually get prioritized. Getting into the splits, we're going to start with our 2 or 3 day splits. These are going to allow you to focus on compound movements that will build a really great foundation for your lifting career while just about maxing out your recovery. These splits are pretty much only for beginners by default because as you get into the intermediate or advanced stages, it's going to be really impractical and annoying to cram all of the volume you need for growth into 2 or 3 training days per week. The first split we have is the total body split, and this is probably the best of the low frequency splits because you hit everything 3 times per week. Like I said, most of the people that are running this split are beginners, so hitting everything that many times per week shouldn't be an issue because 1, you're not really strong enough at this point to do that much muscle damage, and 2, you're not training that hard anyways because you just started. This next option allows for a little bit more variety in our training, and it is the upper lower total body split. This one's going to allow you to have a little bit more variety in your training as you're not doing everything every day while still getting a lot of recovery and focusing on your compound movements. Now, the third split I have here in the 3 day splits category is the alternating upper lower split. This is going to allow you to hit everything once or twice a week, which is why I still think that the total body split is better. But if you really don't like training your entire body every single session and you want a little bit, and you still only have 3 training days per week, this is an option you could go for. And finally, in this section, we have the upper lower hypertrophy split. Just so you guys know, a hypertrophy day is a day that's usually at the end of the split, the end of the week, where you do a lot of isolation work for underdeveloped muscles or anything else you really want to work on. Like I said earlier, these splits are almost exclusively reserved for beginners just because of how tough it is to cram a ton of volume in. But the other camp that would be using 3 day splits are those with just no time to train. Next up, we're getting into our 4 day splits, and if you have 4 available training days, you're probably going to be doing the classic upper lower split. You can play with 4 day splits a little bit, like splitting the first upper or the second upper day, into a push day, a pull day, or a chest back day and a shoulders arms day. But then you're cutting out legs, and unless you have super massive tree trunk legs only to be trained once a week, upper lower is probably going to be the best bet for you. Now, how do we know when we're ready to move from a 3 day per week schedule to a 4 day per week schedule? The first indicator is that you completely stop making gains. Now, if you're a beginner who's using a 3 day split, like most people will be, you're likely to move on to a 4 day split before you stop making gains completely for other reasons. But if you're somebody who's been training 3 days a week for years, this could happen to you. The next reason is progression just isn't practical up to a certain point when you use a 3 day split. You're eventually gonna want to start adding sets, and once you add sets to a certain point, doing 3 day per week training just does not make sense because you're doing a ridiculous amount of volume in a single training day. You can jump to a 4 day split before these 2 things happen if you just like lifting and want to do it more. That is also a reason why a lot of people move up from a 3 to a 4 day split. And now we get into our 5 day splits, which offer us much more variation in our programming. This is where being mindful of prioritized muscles comes into play. You certainly prioritize muscles when you do a total body split or an upper lower split if you train 4 days a week, but that's more so just arranging your exercises within each training day. When you are choosing a 5 day split, knowing which muscles are priorities to you is super important because that'll completely change what muscles you train on each day. All splits in this section are going to start with an upper lower, followed by usually a rest day, and then we have 3 separate back halves to go over. Now the first split is the upper lower push pull leg split. So this is exactly what I mean when I say it's important to be mindful of which muscles are important for you to grow. So if we choose this push pull legs back half, if your top 2 muscles you want to prioritize are either your chest, delts, or triceps, along with either your upper back, lats, or you could just say back or biceps, this is going to be a good option for you because you can train them both on separate days. You'll have that full day of recovery before training the other one. Obviously, say you want to grow your chest and then your lats, but your lats are more important to you than your chest. You'd probably put this pull day first, do your lats first on the pull day and first in the week, and then do your chest first on the next day. Our next option for the 5-day splits is the upper lower Arnold split. Arnold split is essentially a chest and back day followed by a shoulders, biceps, and triceps day followed by legs. Now, if you want to prioritize your chest, upper back, or lats along with your delts, biceps, or triceps, this is one you could certainly go for. We also have the upper lower antagonist split. The antagonist split is essentially where you pair your chest with your biceps, then you have a back and tricep day, and then you put legs with shoulders. Also, I forgot to mention, on this push-pull leg split, if you have strong shoulders or you just don't want to do shoulders with chest, you can totally take the shoulders and move it over to leg day. Back to the antagonist split though, you know the drill by now. If you want to grow your chest or your biceps along with your back or your triceps, go with this. If you also want to prioritize your shoulders a little more along with your chest, this is where putting that shoulder day on the leg day helps quite a bit. Keep in mind with this split though, you do train antagonistic muscle groups on the same day in the back half. If you train this chest and bicep day first, your bicep training will affect your back training. So if you care about growing your back more than you care about growing your biceps, or vice versa with chest and triceps, then you want to make sure you put that corresponding day first. Finally, in the 5-day splits, we have the upper lower hypertrophy split, but the 5-day version, this is one of my favorite splits. I ran the split for quite a long time. This one allows you to focus on your compounds twice a week while still getting a day at the end of the week to work on hypertrophy work or accessory isolation work. This could be great for a beginner who really likes training, wants to train 5 days a week, did 3 days a week, did 4 days a week, and they move quickly to a 5-day per week schedule because they just love it so much. They can still do their compound movements twice a week, still build that technical foundation for all the movements, and then start to incorporate some isolation work for maybe lagging muscle groups or just to start adding more variety to their training. Now, when do I move from a 4-day per week split to a 5-day per week split? If you're currently training 4 days per week, it is likely you're doing an upper lower split and you're still focusing on your compound movements. And through the beginner stage, all your muscles are growing pretty evenly and rapidly. But by the time you get to the intermediate stage, you're gonna start to notice some of your muscles lagging behind potentially. Adding that 5th day essentially allows you to get more volume in for those weaker muscles, or makes it a lot easier to fit that into a training week. You could, again, just want to lift more or have shorter workouts, and those are both perfectly good reasons to move to 5 days as well. And now we're going to move on to our 6-day splits, and these are pretty much for intermediate to advanced lifters. Beginners are still going to be using the 3 or 4 day splits most likely. Go for 6 days if you want to maximize muscle growth, maybe. I'm still not personally 100% sure about this. You do get 1 extra day of volume, but you also lose 1 whole day of recovery. So if you want to figure out how many days per week to train is best for you, you're just going to have to figure out how much you can recover from and how much that extra rest day affects your ability to perform the rest of the week and in weeks after that. Our first split is the classic push-pull leg split. All the splits in this section are just 3-day splits that we've gone over, or 3-day back halves that we've gone over that are repeated twice in a week. And you know the drill, we just went over it. If you want to prioritize either your chest, delts, or triceps along with your back or biceps, this one's great for you. You can also move the delts to the leg day like we talked about earlier. Our next option we have is the Arnold split, starting out with the chest and back day, followed by the delts and arms day, and then the leg day. For those who want to prioritize the chest or back along with the delts or biceps or triceps, this is something you can consider. And finally, we just have the antagonist split, the one we went over earlier, back and tries, chest and tries, delts and legs. This one's cool because the delts are with the leg day. Like I said, you can do this with the push day. And I do like that because chest and shoulder training together can be a lot at times. And for the 1% of people who have huge legs that don't need to be prioritized as much, you can do delts first and prioritize them along with the chest, or any of those other push day muscles. Now, how do we know when we're ready to move on from a 5-day split to a 6-day split? It's the exact same process as 4 to 5. Progression is no longer practical. You want to do more isolation work, or either you want shorter workouts or just want to lift more. All of those reasons can be reasons why you move to a 6-day split. Now, the final section of this video, training muscles more than 2 times per week. Now, this is most likely for intermediate to advanced lifters who know these 3 things. First is which muscles are lacking in their physique. Like I said earlier, when you're a beginner, all your muscles are growing fast and at a pretty similar pace. Secondly, they know how much volume each of their muscles need for growth. This is important to know because if you're just throwing extra training days for certain muscles, you're going to absolutely tire yourself out if you've never done it before or if you're a beginner. And finally, how much volume can each muscle recover from? So let's say, for example, you just keep adding sets to your lats. You keep adding sets to lat training and your lats can just handle a shit ton of volume. And then you also realize that your lats can not only handle a ton of volume, but they recover incredibly quickly from that volume, usually before your next back session is scheduled. You can try adding a third day for your lats and see if it helps you get better gains. Now, if you are in that stage where you know all that stuff, you're advanced enough, how do you know when to move from 2 times a week training to 3 times a week training? I use this order of strategies to fix lagging muscles. Solutions 1 through 3 are going to be covered in a later video. Option 4 is what we're going to go over right now, and the only reason it's the 4th option but in the first video is because if you've already gone through some programs and you've already tried those first 3 things, this step here in the program writing process is where you would implement solution number 4. But like I said, the first strategy is making sure you're actually targeting your muscle with whatever variation you're using, and if you're not targeting your muscle, try to find one that does. Let's say, for example, your chest is a lagging muscle and you just cannot get it to grow. So before you try any other things, you want to make sure that you're using the best variation of whatever chest exercise you're doing for you. Say, for example, you've been using a bench press, just regular barbell bench press, and you notice after your workouts that your chest doesn't really get tired, your shoulders just hurt, and as a result, your chest is a lagging muscle on your physique. What you can then do is try maybe a machine press, maybe an incline barbell, dumbbell. Try other variations or other chest exercises to see if you can find one that really just tears your pecs apart. That's the first thing I would do, and then once you do that, if that still doesn't work, I would train that muscle first in your session or place that session where you train that muscle earlier in the week. This is like the push and pull thing we talked about earlier. If you want to prioritize your back and it's just not growing, make sure that your back exercises are first in your session and then make sure that that pull day is before that push day. That applies to not just push and pull, obviously, but any day. Third is to increase your weekly volume. Try adding another set or 2 each week to your training for that specific muscle and see if it does not grow. And the 4th and final solution or potential solution, I would try adding another training day for that muscle. Now, some of the more common muscles that a lot of people can handle higher frequency for are the biceps, mid-back, shoulders, and calves. These muscles' combination of fiber type, muscle size, and their potential for stretch allow them to recover faster for most individuals. Now, in my limited experience with programming these higher frequency splits, this is the best one I could come up with. It's a push-pull leg sort of 6-day split, but it adds an extra day for your biceps and your mid-delts. I'm going to be running this program or something similar to this in the next couple months, and I'll probably make an updated video regarding higher frequency training once I have more experience with it. But as you can see, we have this first day, the pull/delts day, where we train our biceps and mid-delts, and they both get a day off, and then we train our delts with legs, and then our biceps, now having 2 days off, get trained again on the first or second pull day, and then after that, our mid-delts having 1 day off since the leg day, get trained again on the push day. That gives our biceps a day off, and we train them one more time on the leg day. And then the recovery day after that, Sunday, whatever day that is, we'll give both of them a rest before starting over again next week. Like I said, I don't have a ton of experience programming these or even running these. This is the best one that I can come up with for 2 muscle groups that I feel like a lot of people might want to try higher frequency for if you're at that point. And that just about does it for video number 1, choosing our split. Check out video number 2 now to continue building your hypertrophy program and make those epic gains.